Okay, guys, welcome to the very last session, the last webinar for professional development. This session, I'm just going to do a quick recording for you for the assessment support. So this is the fourth and final session for this subject, which is our first subject on professional development. You'll notice the first three webinars, the resource support webinars, are already on your screen. If we scroll down, you can see that they're already uploaded and are there. Just click on the YouTube playlist and you'll be able to access the first three webinars, which will take you through all of the learning activities. So all of those webinars that you see there will give you all of the information that you need to successfully complete those 5 learning activities. In today's session, I'm going to be taking you through the first 3 assessment tasks, or all of the assessment tasks for this particular subject. So by the end of today's session, you'll have all of the information that you need to successfully complete all of the assessments for this first subject. Okie dokie. So what I'm going to do first is just open up the very first assessment task. I'll read through the instructions and then I'll try and break it down a little bit for you. Okie dokie, first assessment task on professional development. Split up into 2 parts. The first part, we've got a series of tools. We've got 5 different tools that we've talked through so far in this subject. SMART goals, planning cycle, priority matrix, action learning, and 360-degree feedback as a tool, professional development tools. First part of your assignment is to actually just tell me why, when, and how you might be able to use each of those tools. So why, when, and how? So for example, the first tool is SMART goals. So the way you might actually set this up, this is part A, this is your first part of this first assignment. You might actually use each of these 5 tools as a subcategory, and underneath each, provide the why, the when, and the how. So when we say why, what we're actually saying is, what's the purpose? Why would we even bother? So that's the question you need to ask yourself in relation to SMART goals. What are the benefits? Why do we do it? What's the purpose? What are we trying to achieve out of it? So that's the why. The when is very much just in terms of when it would actually be, when you might actually use it. That one's sort of quite straightforward. So when might I use a SMART goal? When would that actually be something that I might use? And the last one is how. For that one, I actually want you to explain to me or explain to anybody how you can actually use that tool. So you need to be able to explain that tool as if you're explaining it to somebody who doesn't know how to use it. So why? First part, what's the purpose? Why would we even bother using this particular tool? When could that tool be actually used? And how, that's the actual explanation on how you'd actually use that particular tool. So that's where, for this first one, we've talked a little bit about SMART goals. This one, you're going to actually tell me how you'd actually write up a SMART goal. So you'll need to be able to demonstrate your understanding on that acronym, which we've referred to, or through the materials refers to as specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-based. Now I'll just go through each of those again with you briefly. Specific refers to the fact that this is in reference to goal setting, to having a SMART goal. Specific relates to the fact that your goals must be specific. If your goal isn't specific, it's going to have a far less chance of being achieved. For example, if you say something like, my goal is to be happy, it's not very specific because there's many things that could actually mean. So whenever there's any confusion or ambiguity surrounding goals, that's when they start to break down. To be specific, you can go through all of the 6W sort of questions. So who, the what, the where, the when, the why, the which. Those sorts of questions will help you get everything into that sort of specific shape. The next letter, M, measurable. You need to be able to measure the success of your goal, or you need to be able to know when you've actually achieved it. So when is that exact moment when you've actually achieved your goal? If you can answer that question, then your goal does become measurable. The next two are interesting. The learning materials refer to the A and the R as one being achievable, and the second one being realistic. Now, I'm not a really big fan of these two. I don't mind if you refer to those in your answer because that's what the learning materials talk about. But achievable and realistic to me really mean the same thing. I mean, can it be done? That's really what we're sort of saying. So if your goal is to fly to the moon and be there tomorrow, I would say it's probably not achievable because it takes a little bit longer than 24 hours to get to the moon. So that's what we mean by achievable and realistic. I actually prefer to swap those ones completely over. I prefer to use it as assignable. So when we say assignable, with every good goal, there's other people involved. So who are those other people that are involved in your goal, and how can they help you achieve your goal? So that's what we mean by assignable. And the R, the preference that I have for the letter R, and again, you can use the ones that are in the materials. If you use these ones, that's absolutely fine too. The R stands for relevant. Now, relevant is really, really important because if the goal per se actually doesn't mean anything to you, you're going to find it really, really hard to have the motivation to continue and to push through for that particular goal. So, if I had a goal to learn 400 classical pieces on the violin, it's not really relevant to me. It's not something that I'm interested in doing. It'd be a real hard slog. It'd be really, really difficult to achieve because I don't really have that absolute connection to it myself. So I prefer it to be relevant because that tells you the importance and why it connects with you and that sort of a thing. The T here, we're looking at time-based. So that's the last component. All good goals should have a time. If there's no time attached to it, then you're going to find it then you won't be achieving your goal either. So SMART goals, that's just the recap on SMART goals for you. So that's sort of the information you'll be telling me in the how. Planning cycle. Just in a nutshell with the planning cycle, it's about the now, the this week. So what's the goal for this week? About the next, what's coming up next? What's in the upcoming workload for the next week? The 90 days, the 3 months. What does the pipeline look like? What's happening in the next 3 months? And then you've got the 3-year or the long-term plan. So that's sort of more your strategic goals. What's happening in the long term? The idea really between a planning cycle is just being able to lay out each of your goals over that cycle. So between now and next week, 3 months and 3 years. And the key takeout for me is that it's really about knowing where you're heading and having a little bit of synergy between all of your goals as well. So if you know where you're going, you can make your long-term and your short-term goals synergized. The next tool we should be talking about is the priority matrix. The priority matrix looks at just categorizing your working priorities into different areas or different categories. And the categories that we look at here are either important or urgent. So it's either something that's important or not important, or it's either something that's urgent or not urgent. There are 4 combinations of these. So it can either be important and urgent. Now, if you can identify a work task or a priority of yours which is not only important, when we mean important, we mean it's actually relating to what your goals are, what you're actually trying to achieve in the business. What are the goals of the business? What are the strategic goals of the business? Are those actions that you're doing leading towards what you're trying to achieve? So that's what we mean by important. And urgency, that just refers to the immediacy in time. Does it need to be done now, or can it be something that can be dealt with a little bit later? So the key here is that if you can identify a work priority as something that's important and urgent, it needs to be done immediately. If it's important but it's not urgent, it means it's something that you should do next. You need to make a list of these things and be ready to do these. If it's not important but it's urgent, you should really consider delegating these things. There's a lot of things that pop up in our work list that are urgent. Emails come in, can you please do this? Can you do that for me? We get caught up on the urgent items and we tend to forget about the important stuff. So consider delegating some of those items that are in that urgent list that aren't important. And last but not least is the not important and not urgent stuff. Really, that's the sort of stuff that you should be doing at the end. So that's in a nutshell, the priority matrix. Now, I guess it's probably not a bad time just to mention, if you're sort of new to doing some study or these sort of concepts, or the idea of using what we call models and these sorts of things are a little bit foreign to you, with all of these sort of ideas, there's always a good takeout. There's always there's always something to be learned and gained from that bit of information, but it's also not the be all and end all. So this priority matrix, it's a great way of being able to identify, hang on, what am I actually doing? Am I actually focusing on activities which are leading towards those strategic goals of the business or my own personal goals? Or do I get caught up all the time on, these other tasks that seem urgent but aren't overly important? So this tool can really help you identify those sorts of things. It certainly isn't the be all and end all. I actually know for myself that I operate differently at different times of the day. So that's another factor. So I know that my energy levels are right up there in the morning, and I generally prefer to do a lot of my heavy lifting in the morning and get a lot of those, I like to do a lot of my marking and assessing in the morning. I generally prefer to save the afternoon for more creative tasks. I'm not very creative first thing in the morning. I'm more likely to do a webinar in the evening, or I'm more likely to call students in the late afternoon, or I'm more likely to design some whatever it might be in the afternoon, because that's where I'm a little bit more creative. So understanding yourself and how you actually operate is just as important as understanding how some of these, actually this particular tool can help you, as it were. Action learning, the interesting thing is action learning is really used in business as a team problem solving skill or technique. So business use it as a team problem solving technique. There's not a lot of information in the learning materials about action learning. So really it's effectively it's about experiential learning, so learning through experiencing, and then going through a process of um, collaborative reflection. So working with other people, reflecting on what you've just gone through. So essentially it's about going off, experiencing what you need to experience, and then coming back as if you're having a meeting with 4 or 5 other members of your team, and trying to reflect to actually solve some problems. One of the things that we find in action learning is that it generally it needs a facilitator. It needs a neutral party. So it needs somebody who's generally, to make it work, you pick somebody to facilitate that doesn't work in that organization. So you might call on somebody from outside to help facilitate this session. So say you're a business, you've got some problems, you want to solve some of these problems, you want to involve some of the guys in your organization. There are many issues with getting real information out of people that work together, people that are worried about being in conflict with other members of their team, people worried about saying something that they shouldn't say, people, there's a lot of issues that go on, and sometimes it's helpful to have an outsider, somebody who's neutral, doesn't know the ins and outs of the business, doesn't have any of the previous bias that business might have. They may be able to help facilitate a problem-solving session, and so that's essentially what action learning is. It is experiential learning, but then coming back and collaborative reflection with the group of your colleagues or co-workers, usually facilitated by a neutral party outside that can help facilitate that session. Okay, now 360-degree feedback. If you checked in on my last webinar, you'll see that I had a bit of information on that. If you did happen to fall asleep through that session, you probably weren't the first one. It was a little bit of a lengthy discussion last time. Just in a nutshell, again, the key with 360-degree feedback is it is confidential and it is anonymous. It is not a tool to be used in a performance appraisal. It is not a tool to be used as a performance appraisal of technical skill. It is actually, 360-degree feedback is a self-development tool to develop your own leadership skill. So it's a self-development tool to develop your own leadership skill. The key words here are anonymous and confidential. What we mean by anonymous is that the people that are filling in that survey about you do not need to provide their information. So when you get that information back, you don't know who said what, and nor should you. And what we mean by the word confidential is that information is for your eyes only. It is not for your manager or your supervisor to review what your 360-degree feedback, which is what organizations do. And I feel that that's a very, very, very dangerous approach. It certainly invites conflict and a few other issues as well. So that's in a nutshell the 5 tools. So give me the give me the why, the when, the how. So the why again, what's the point, what's the purpose, why would we bother doing it? When you might actually be able to use that. So if you can actually provide an actual situation, that's fine. Or if you just want to generally comment on when you might be able to use that tool, that's fine. And how, that's really what we've just gone through in the last sort of 10 minutes, explaining what each of those tools are. Just explain how you would actually use that tool as if you were explaining to somebody who has never heard about it before. Okay, so that's part A. That's all you need to do. Now, there's no word limit on part A. It says here on implementation of these tools, write a reflection report of 1,000 words. Well, the 1,000 words is actually in reference to these 10 questions here that I've just highlighted on the screen. So what I want you to do is put each of these 5 tools in part A as a subcategory, put the why, the when, the how under each. There's no word limit if you can answer it in 50 words. I'd be pretty surprised if you can answer all that in 50 words, but if you can, that's fine. I would say it's probably a bit more. 1,000 words is what you need to keep all of the content for this section, because this is your reflection report. All you need to do for this section, this is part B, so 1,000 words. I want you to answer each of these. How many of that? 10 questions in there. So please copy these questions. Oops. Please copy these questions. And the way I'd like to see this one answered is just pop it into a Word document and then pop your answer underneath each question. We're looking for 1,000 words for part B. That will actually be all you need to do for this very, very first assessment. So I might briefly go through some of these questions that you'll see. So having a look at the first question, how can these tools give me a competitive edge? Actually, we talked a little bit about competitive edge in the professional development webinar last week. So really, give me an idea how these tools that you've just talked through are going to be able to give you a competitive edge in your industry. So again, save the chit chat, if you like, save the discussion for this section. In that part A, just be really, really straightforward. Why, when, how, and leave the discussion for this section here. So what you can do to answer this, you can just talk about one of the tools. You can talk about all 5. If you want to talk about the competitive edge benefits of all 5 tools, by all means. If you just want to pick out one of the tools and say how this particular tool is going to give you a competitive edge, that's fantastic. If you want to answer it generically, i.e., if you're not working at the moment and just want to talk about how they can help you in a professional setting, that's fine. If you are working, you'd like to talk about how that tool can help you in your employment right now, that's absolutely fine as well. Second question, how can using these tools make a leader display improved planning behaviors? Okay, so how can these tools that you've just gone through, how can they improve your planning behavior? And generally speaking, how can it improve your leadership skill? So leadership is the key theme of this course. It's what everything effectively revolves around. And by leadership, what we're talking about is the ability to relationship manage. It's the ability to motivate, energize, and to inspire others to produce work or to influence others to do more work. And that's what we mean. So, how can it improve your planning behavior? Anything like that? It'd be anything along those lines is fine. Now, next question there, how can increasing use of these tools ensure alignment to the organization's goals and objectives? Talk about how using these tools can assist you with that. There's a few tools up there that will definitely make a bit of sense in relation to that question. Maybe not all of them, but some. Next one, how can using these tools help grow your network? So what is it about these tools? Now, not all of them might be appropriate for growing your network. Some of them might be more appropriate, or definitely some are more appropriate than others, so draw on those ones. And that's all you have to say is how they can assist you with growing your network, how these tools have increased my skill and knowledge in planning. You may find that you're doubling up a little bit, or these questions tend to cover all areas or cover all bases, if you like. So if you feel that you've doubled up a little bit, that's okay. And there may very well be a bit of a dub up. Increasing your skill of knowledge of planning might be similar to some of the things that you might be talking about, and how it's going to help a leader display improved planning behaviors. You might be sort of saying similar stuff. That's okay. Next one here, how can these tools reduce stress while at work? I'd love you guys to make the link between work-life balance and how some of these tools can actually help you achieve work-life balance. So that's the angle we'd like you to go with. We did talk a little bit about work-life balance, I think, in the first session. How can these tools support you when your job role or job responsibilities change? So imagine moving into a brand new company, or imagine if you've just been given a promotion. Imagine if you're looking after somebody else's job for a week. So they're on holiday, manager's gone on holiday, you're now managing the store for a week. How can these tools help you when you're managing the store for a week while somebody's gone? You don't want to get anything, you don't want to miss anything, you want to make sure you've done a great job. It'll look really good for you if you do a really good job, so it's quite important. How can these tools help you? Okay, which tool is best suitable for measurement against it just says here desired job, but that should actually say desired job standard. What this question is actually asking is which tool actually will help you to measure and I'll actually try and update this beforehand, which tool will actually be suitable for helping you measure yourself against your own job standards. So if I'm a receptionist, some of my job standards or job competencies might be in relation to treating all customers in a friendly manner. Now, that might be really hard to measure. How do I measure that per se? Some things are easy to measure than others. If I'm a sales guy, I might have sales targets. I can run a sales report and know exactly how many items I've sold. Some things are a bit harder. So what we want to know from you is which one of these tools will help you measure yourself up against some of your own desired job standards. One of them sort of yells out a little bit more than another, although in relation to that, we have discussed before, though, 360 feedback, which is what I'm talking about. This one is there as a self-development tool. It's really not to be used to measure yourself against job competencies. So, yeah, I'm also happy if you say none of these are really that appropriate for me. If you can describe why, I'm happy with that too. If you're in a position where leadership skill, behavioralisms, things that are non-technical functions like will assist you with your measurement against your own job standards, then a 360-degree feedback would be appropriate. If you're in a very, very technical sort of a role, it may not be. Okay, which learning style would best suit you to learn more about these tools and develop competence? It's a bit of a silly question. Really just want to know what's your learning style. So you can either use the VAK, the visual, auditory, or kinesthetic learning styles to reflect on. You can reflect on some of the other learning styles that are in the learning materials. Just tell me what your learning style is, and yeah, how you might use that learning style with one of these particular tools, or which tool seems to suit you a little bit better with that particular style. At the very least, just want you to identify your style here in reference to these tools. This last one, please provide any evidence of tools and documents that led you to this outcome. Don't worry so much about this. There's nothing you need to really provide here. The one thing I will say is that we're starting to get into the world of academic pieces or reports, academic essays. In the world of academia, if we are to refer to somebody else, so if we say something on our assignment, it's presumed that that information is ours. Now, if we quote somebody else, if we're talking about work-life balance and we found an article on a professor that talked about work-life balance and we put that quote in our work, we need to refer to that professor in our work. That's what we call a reference, or it's called referencing. We need to reference the original author of that particular work. Otherwise, it's presumed that that work is our own, or that we're claiming it to be our own statement. And that's what effectively becomes plagiarism. So what we're looking for, if you are going to use it, and it's actually not necessary for this particular assessment, for the first one. It's one that we'll throw in the mix maybe a little bit later. I'll get you to practice that. It's one that was actually part of the old course. I'm actually not even sure if it's going to be part of this. It's not something you really need to worry about so much at a diploma level. If you're going to be going on to further studies, higher education, it's certainly something you'll have to be aware of as you progress. But in the short, if you do use anybody else's work, so to speak, please just refer to it. I don't mind how you refer to it. If you want to refer by just mentioning their name somewhere in the page, if you want to put their name in brackets, if you want to put a little list or some links at the bottom of the page, that's one way you can get around this for the time being. Okie dokie. Well, that is the end of the assessment task number 1. So that's all you need for assessment task 1. Do now is have a look and see. Let's have a look and see what assessment task 2 is all about. Okie dokie, assessment task 2. Again, a 2-parter. So split your submission to two sections, part A, part B, or part 1, part 2, whichever way you like. This is all about technology. So this is, and I'll read it straight off the page, but this assessment requires you to research technology that's available for you to do your job. Research and list 2 to 3 pieces of technology that help you to better plan and prioritize your workload. When you're researching tools, you can look for apps, applications, websites, hardware, or anything classified as technology that can assist you to better plan. This is still all about planning. It's still all about professional development. It's still all about understanding yourself as a leader. So what we want you to do for this first part, now please don't get this wrong. What I want you to do is list only. List only. Do not go into the descriptions. Part 2 or part B is your descriptions, just like the first one. Part 1, I just want you to list. So the way to set this one up is use each of these 6 dot points as your subheading. And underneath each subheading, just list off some technology that can actually cater for that. So prioritizing and tasking your workload, give me 1 or 2 pieces of technology that can cut it. Setting goals, give me 1 or 2 pieces of technology out there, and you'll definitely have to do a bit of research. This is essentially a research assignment. To grow as a leader or to manage connections in your professional network, there's a really obvious one for the managing connections in your professional network. It's something called LinkedIn. So that would be an example of something I would want to see for that one. LinkedIn, manage connections in your professional network. I just want you to listen. Don't go into the full explanations just yet. Just listen. So you need to have a minimum of 3 pieces of technology that can cover the whole set. I would actually really like to see at least one for each. So preferably 5 or 6 pieces of technology that cover the whole set. That would be great. So again, just list it for part A or part 1. Now in part B, what I'm looking for is a 1,000 word report, which will cover those 6 questions. So to cover or to set this one up, what you can do is also just copy each of those 6 dot points onto your page, and then under each dot point, you can place your answer. You've got 5 or 6 questions there to hit up for 1,000 words. Again, so questions similar to the previous one. What using technology can help for you to progress as a leader? Now that's obviously a very, very open, wide open question. What can technology help you do to be a good role model, to lead by example, to help motivate other people, or to influence other people? So you can go a multitude of ways on this one. You can be quite creative with your answers on this. How did you go about finding the tools that you chose? What I want to know is, how did you find it? Did you go online to find it? We all do different things. Did you see one of your friends using something and say, hey, what are you using? Did you go to a shop? Did you ask a shopkeeper and say, look, I need something that can help me do this? So that's what I want to know. I want to know how you actually went about finding the tools that you chose. So you've got 6 or however many tools you'll list in part 1. Tell me how you went about finding each of those tools in this one for this question. Okay. The next question is actually asking what your selection process is. It's actually different from the finding. The finding is how did I actually discover it. The selection process is how did I make the decision? So what was my defining decision? So things that might help you, I guess, define your decision. It might come down to what was the cheapest item, or your decision-making process might be in relation to the quality that particular piece of technology could produce. That will obviously come down to your own personal choice. So what is your selection process? How do you decide? If you see 3 or 4 items that do the same sort of thing, what is it that you're looking for? How are you going to make that decision? The next question is a little bit of a double up again. So what technology or tool can add the most value as a leader? So again, we're talking about the link between technology and leadership, and how that can help you progress as a leader. I want you to pick one of those pieces of technology that you've listed in part 1 and just tell me why it relates to you per se, or you in your particular role, or you with your own professional development. Why do you think that's going to be beneficial to you? So it's quite a personal question, because you're going to be reflecting on your own situation a little bit here. So tell me why that piece of technology will be beneficial to you, or why you feel that piece of technology might give you the most value as a progressing leader. And the last question for this one is how the technology can actually assist you to maintain a work-life balance. So talk about what a work-life balance means for you, and make the link between the technology that you've listed, the technology that you've talked about, and how that actually can assist you in maintaining or even just getting a work-life balance to begin with. So you might just be talking a little bit about what work-life balance is for you. You might be talking about some of the technology that you picked. Make that link between how that technology can actually help you to achieve that. And the very last thing here, as it's a research assignment, I want to know where you've found things. So if you've actually just found some items online, so you might be looking for latest apps for goal setting. You might be on the Apple Store or the Google Play Store having a look at the latest apps. If you find something, just give me a link to the site that you pulled it from. Just like to see some evidence of your research and where you've been and where you've found some stuff. So all you need to do at the bottom of that one is just put a couple of links to places and pages that you've referenced, and that one will be covered. And that's task two, guys. So that's the first two tasks done and sorted. 1,000 words for that second half. Part two, remember, part A, just list. Don't save all of your content and discussion for part two. Just pop the pieces of technology. Oh, super duper important. I should have mentioned it. A computer is not enough. A mobile phone is not enough. So when we're saying technology, we want you to tell us the actual software or the hardware or the application. You can't say that your mobile phone will help you grow as a leader. We want to know what function of your mobile phone. You can't say a computer. Tell us what particular piece of software or what function of a computer is actually going to assist you. Okie dokie, that's the end of assessment task number 2 for professional development. Let's have a look at the last one, assessment task number 3. I'll just read it from the screen. You are required to create a personal development plan showing your career objectives and an action plan to achieve your career objectives. Upload your finished document in a Word format. So again, we've got 2 parts. We love our 2 parts. Part A or part 1, I keep saying part A and B. Part 1, 3 questions. I'll go through each of these questions. This is all about coming up with a goal, which hopefully will sit side by side with you as you progress through this course. I'd love you guys to pick. So the first question is, what is your career objective and why? What I'm actually asking you to do is to give me a SMART goal. I'm looking for a SMART goal. If you provide a career objective which is not SMART, i.e. it's not measurable, it doesn't seem like it's relevant or achievable, it's non-specific, or it doesn't have a time component to it, I'm going to bounce it back to you. You need to be providing SMART goals when you're laying down your career objectives. Here, I'd really like you to pick something that's in that middle range, that sort of 6 month to 1 year range. I feel if you set a goal at this point of time, which is 3 to 5 years, it's just that little bit out of reach. I'd like you to pick something that'll actually sit side by side with you over the next 6 months to 12 months. That'll be something that you can revisit and work through as you go through this particular course. So, yep, what is your career objective and why? Remember, it's got to be SMART. It must be a SMART goal. So that's that one done. So really 1 or 2 sentences will cover that first point. Second point, what personal and professional development you need to undertake to achieve these objectives. Specify the type of development, i.e. or e.g. coaching, training, mentoring. For this part, the best way to handle this particular question, this particular section, is pick the job that you want, or this is your dream job, okay? This is your goal. I would like to be working in this particular role by X, Y, and Z period of time. What you should do at this point is actually go on and look for a job advertisement for that particular role that you're ideally looking to get into. So go off and go on to Seek, go onto some of those sites, have a look for some advertisements for some roles that you would ideally like to, or what your career objective is. See if you can find something that exactly matches that. Then what I need you to do is to effectively do an analysis, if you like, on your own skill set, skills audit, make a comparison of what the actual role is asking for and what you can provide. So this question is asking you what personal and professional development you need to undertake. This is why I say the best way to do that, grab a job ad, list off the key responsibilities, the key requirements of that particular role in one column. That's your left-hand column. That's where I've got to be. And in the right column, you can actually make an assessment of, where you may need some extra development and so forth. So that's probably the best way to tackle this one. For this, I would like to see a few areas of development that you need to undertake. It might be that you need to get a certificate, a qualification. It might mean that you need a little bit of help using computers. It might mean that you need some assistance in something in terms of communication styles or techniques, whatever that might be. What I'd like to see is with each of those development items that you've picked, I'm hoping you've got at least 2 or 3 items to run with. So pick at least 2 or 3. With those 2 or 3 development items that you've identified through your own skills audit, I want you to tell me which type of development option suits you best, i.e. having a mentor, or you might go and do some online study. Tell me the way that you are actually going to improve that particular area. So you've identified your area, and then you've also identified the style of development that you're going to undertake to improve that particular skill. Okay, I hope that makes sense. Lastly, what I'd like you to do is give me a little action plan. I want to see the steps that you're going to be taking to achieve this particular goal, this particular objective. So a minimum of 10 items. If you don't have 10, you haven't given me enough. what I want to see is the item. So what it is you need to do. So break it down. What are the things you need to do? Might be that you need to update your resume. It might be that you need to, if you have a look at what you've actually included in the previous question, you've already got some ideas, or you've already got some things that you need to start doing anyway. So what I want to see is at least 10 items on an action plan. You need to show me what the item is, by when that item is to be achieved by, so a date, and a people/persons responsible. So who are the people that are involved in, and obviously you're going to be involved in that, but there might also be other people as well. So who are the people that are involved in each of those steps? By when does that step need to be achieved by? At least 10. Now, the smaller, the better. Always, 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 the smaller, the better. For many, many, many reasons. It's much easier to do smaller things. Once you start doing a series of smaller things, it's like that snowball effect. The snowball that rolls down the hill, picks up a bit of steam, picks up a bit of speed, grows in stature, grows in size as it rolls down the hill. So those smaller actions are really easy to bite off, and it actually helps with human motivation. And the other thing is, otherwise, if they weren't small steps, then we would only have one step, and that one step was get a job, or become your goal. Now, we know there's a lot more involved than just becoming, so what we're trying to do is just to sort of break it down and work out what we need to start to chip away at. Okay, so that's part A. It's a super duper important part. You really need to get this part cooking and smoking before you move on to the second part. I feel if you miss out on identifying your professional development opportunities, or your career objective isn't right, it's just wrong. It's not a SMART goal per se, then you might struggle a little bit with this. So if you want, you're more than welcome, when you're up to assessment task 3, share with me your part 1 or part A, email it through, give me a call, chat it through. We'll just double check that you're on the right page there with part 1 before you move on to part 2. Part 2 is once you've compiled your personal development plan, so once you've sorted out part 1, 1,000-word summary addressing the following criteria. So just want you to answer these 4 questions, and we're looking for 1,000 words there. So there's a certain amount of content you need to do to hit it up for 1,000. 1,000 words is for the second part only. Questions like how this personal development plan can improve your capability level. Well, to answer that one, tell me what are the skills, what are the things that you're going to be learning. Your capability is about your skills and your knowledge. So what sort of skills and knowledge are you going to improve on? So we're down here, I should highlight this. What skills and knowledge are you going to improve on by virtue of the fact that you've got this development plan? And if you go back to question 2, you'll identify some of those skills and knowledge because you've already done that analysis already there. So reflect on some of those skills, reflect on some of those things that you're going to learn and improve. What development opportunities best suit your learning style? Again, this question just refer to your own learning style. And then talk about what sort of opportunities. So, if you're a hands-on, if you're a kinesthetic person, you might be picking things, you might pick a mentor because you want somebody to shadow you, to be working with you. You really want to get your hands dirty, have somebody be there to back you up. That might be a good style for you. If your style is auditory, you might like to sit in on these sort of webinars. You might like to do some you might like to watch some videos or listen to some audio tapes to assist you. You might ask for instructions. You might do things like that. So depending on what your style is, you might go for a different sort of thing. This question's a little bit silly in and of itself. Again, I'm mostly happy if you just identify your learning style, and if you can make some sort of link between your learning style and the development opportunities or the professional development that you need to undertake that you've already identified, I'll be very happy with that. This one's interesting. How do you feel this personal development plan could grow your network? So what is it about your personal development plan that you've just designed that's going to help you grow your network? So look at the people that you've included here on your action plan. Look at the other people that you're engaged in with here through your professional development. Be creative. Talk about, give me some creative ways or creative answers for this one. There's many ways that this can be answered. So really, this is a reflection on you. How can this personal development plan grow your own personal professional network? And the last one, how do you feel this personal development plan is going to help you achieve your career objective? That can be written effectively somewhat generically. just talk about how you feel this plan that you've just designed is going to help you. So that's quite a personal reflection there. When you're done, what we'd like you to do is to get feedback. Seek feedback on your personal development plan from a member of your network and provide a summary of the conversation. What I want you to do is I want you to list 5 questions that you are going to ask somebody else. So you're going to get your personal development plan and you're going to give it to somebody and you're going to ask them 5 questions. And those 5 questions are going to help you get feedback on what it is you've done. And I just want a summary. I don't want a word for word. It doesn't need to be verbatim. It doesn't need to be exactly word for word. Very, very happy if you just provide a summary of what was said. So here are the 5 questions that I asked the member of my network. And based on those 5 questions, it was discovered that I really need to spend a bit more time on my action plan. I really need to nail down a little bit more on my professional development, or I should consider other opportunities for profession. Whatever that summary is, that's fine. Just want a list of those 5 questions that assisted you to effectively get there. So what were the 5 questions that you asked that essentially elicited that feedback? Some of those questions might be, do you think the professional development plan is achievable in the time frames that I've done? You might say, what other activities or tasks could I do to help achieve that goal? Now, for this one, ultimately, if you've picked your dream job or what you'd like to be doing in the next 6 to 12 months as far as your career is concerned, it'd be great if you can find somebody in that industry. It'd be great if you can find somebody in that role right now. It'd be great if you can find somebody that's a little bit outside of your normal, close sort of network, if you like. Step outside a little bit of the square of your own comfortability to find somebody that can help you with this. So other questions you might ask is, what are some of the changes happening in the industry? What sort of things should I be aware of if I'm going for a role like this? So this is the key to this sort of question. However, if you just get general feedback on your own personal development plan, that is fine too. List the 5 questions. Just give me a summary, a couple of sentences on what the summary of that feedback was. Okie dokie, guys. Now, that ends the first assessment support workshop for professional development. Thanks very much for tuning in. Check out the registration links for next week. We'll be running the next 4 webinars will be run on a Thursday afternoon, 3 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. So all of our next subject starts, is it next week? Yes, it is. Next subject starts next week, which is going to be project management. So for the next 4 weeks, we're going to be running the session at this particular time, Thursday, 3 p.m. Love you to come join in on the conversation. Thanks very much for viewing and watching this edition, and I look forward to seeing you in the next round. Thanks, guys.